I thought I was past the point of being surprised by this government, or by the state of affairs in the United States of America. But no, I'm not. This part comes out of the state of Louisiana. It's not a federal issue, it's a state level one. But it is an issue. It is certainly an issue. The state of Louisiana has just put forth a bill, passed it through the House. House Bill 211. And it brings back slavery. That's a very 2026, 2025 title, isn't it? This is May 1st, 2026. I'm coming in. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. Right before even the crack of dawn. And, well, on April 28th, 2026, through the House, passed a bill to bring back slavery. Now, there is a Louisiana Senate. There is that possibility that this bill gets rejected in the Senate. But the Republicans have the majority there, so you know how that's going to go. Thousands could be forced into unpaid labor in Louisiana under new bill. Isn't that fun? Isn't that great? Again, April 28th, 2026, when this was written. And, well, a controversial bill advancing through the Louisiana legislature could subject unhoused people to fines, jail time, 12 months, or even unpaid labor. Now, the unpaid labor we're going to get to, if they are found sleeping outdoors. The legislation has sparked sharp backlash from civil rights groups and homelessness advocates who warn it could effectively criminalize poverty. Specifically, it is criminalizing sleeping outdoors. Yes, sleeping outdoors. America has gone from a prison state, a capitalist hellscape, and now it is a torture state, because if you fall asleep outdoors, you go to jail. Unfortunately, the places where you can sleep in private cost a lot of money. And in fact, rent is the biggest expense for the average American, because the average American doesn't get medical care because that's expensive. Representative Debbie Villo, a Republican, is the one who has the blood on their hands. Although, it was probably only a matter of time until the Republicans found up another way to criminalize existing. The legislation specifically bans going to sleep, which they call unauthorized camping, in areas that are not designated campgrounds. Now, it does say tents, shelters, bedding, yada, yada, yada. We know how cops are. They're going to arrest every single person who has, a coat tucked around them. That effectively is bedding. And this is why I want everyone to interpret every law in the United States of America under its worst possible interpretation. Because that is how it gets enforced. Until they decide to just go beyond that point. It's never better. It's never better than the worst interpretation. And of course, as with everything in the modern America, it's wrapped under this for the good of the community umbrella, which somehow never actually translates into doing something good for the community. It's always just a mask. So, as is reported here, and this is true in the law, I do have the law, which we'll pull up later. A first offense, sleeping outdoors, 6 months in jail. And you can they'll do 2 years in prison. And if for whatever reason they decide to put you in jail, they can put you in jail off of, all right, well, I'm getting a little frazzled. One thing at a time. First offense, 6 months in jail, $500 fine, or both, which is great. Give the people who are homeless a fine. That is definitely how you solve homelessness. Subsequent convictions, they double it. And also potential unpaid labor, which is very sweet. Very, very sweet. They're also going to have unpaid labor as part of the law, too, because we'll get to all of that. I can't get too far ahead of myself. You can go into a 12-month treatment program, which is jail for 12 months, but you pay for it. Isn't that sweet? You get put in jail for 12 months, but you pay for it. Wasn't Florida putting in place the requirement that you have to pay if you get put in jail? Well, they don't quite do that yet in Louisiana, but you can be forced to go to money jail, where you get half as long, but you have to pay for it. if you are unable to pay. The bill authorizes courts to mandate unpaid labor, and that's section something 3 Bravo, and we'll get to that later, to offset the costs. Aw, how sweet. Now, they do also give you, the courts, the ability to waive the costs, but I feel like that's not going to happen a whole bunch, and we'll get into why. It is forced labor for people who are nonviolent, which is insane. In fact, the bill specifically says people who are convicted of sexual assault crimes, like sex crimes and murder, are not allowed to be put in the forced this forced labor program. So it's specifically targeting nonviolent people, which is fucking evil. You know what? You know why? Because the people who have sex crimes, they're on the sex offender registry, and they have like different restrictions as to who they can be around, but also because I imagine Republicans have a lot more in common with the people that they've excluded from this law than the people they include in this law. Although, you know, that's nothing new, right? We all know Republicans are rapist offenders. And this is the cruelest. I don't know why they're saying one of the cruelest. It puts in place slave debt trap, indentured servitude, slavery. Wow, how homeless people will be impacted. Yeah, all of this, everything about this. If you go to sleep, you die. You go into debt. So now in America, I just want to take a moment to pause. In America, you cannot go to sleep without getting trapped in debt. You cannot go to school, you cannot go get medical care, and you cannot go to sleep on the streets. You cannot be homeless. You also cannot sleep in your car in America without going to jail. This country is actually a hellscape. I said torture state. It's a torture state. Everything about this country just tortures us. I don't know why they say here unsheltered because they lack access to mental health care. It's because they lack access to housing. It's because they're unsheltered. Not because of criminal activity, because while the legislator makes us all about like, oh, addiction is a chronic health medical condition, we have to look at how we address it. We do. Don't put people in prison. But this is the Gavin Newsom thing, right? This is the care courts where they're like, I see a problem. I don't want to see a problem. Let's take the people hurt by the problem and disappear them. They already got mass concentration camps they're building across the country. I imagine this bill will become the norm. Although NPSM-7 or whatever. No, NPSM-7 is the anti-American one. Whatever the homelessness one is that's already criminalizes homelessness, could already be used to grab people off the streets. I don't know what the fuck is going on. But of course, this is going to be a very popular bill with the corporations because forced labor, well, that's good for them. Now, the bill does say it has to be like a charitable organization, but you all know how that goes. Charity, everything's a charity. Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton's vacation fund is a charity. Everything's a fucking charity in this country. Everything can be a charity. You just gotta have a lawyer. And companies can get lawyers. They could do like the stocking Amazon's warehouses charity. That could be a charity at this point. They can make a charity specifically for providing work for these homeless people in Louisiana. And then use them as slaves under the guise of charity. Right? It's mental health, it's charity, all these nice terms they use for the kids to stop terrorism. We all know how it goes. Every one of those terms is used to take away civil rights, to put people into horrible situations, including imprisonment. They want people to work for them. They already have forced labor in prisons. This is forced labor, alternative prisons. Oh, also, housing advocates have a good point here. Arrest records and jail time gonna make it really hard to get a job in this job market. People with a clean record can't get a job. People with degrees can't get a job. So yeah, you're gonna have an arrest record and time in jail. Sweet. And then, like, once someone gets out of this program, where do they go to? Back to the street. You can pick these people up the same day. And I imagine police departments, if they're serious about this, if they're serious about their job, would just start doing that. Like, start stalking people when you release them and pick them up again. Pick them up again that night. I genuinely think everyone involved in in running these programs and passing this law, every one of them should just be shot dead. Like, at this point, we should just have more communities that take up shotguns and start blowing off people's heads. That is how we fix this problem. Because all of these horrible policies are put in place under these legitimate systems. They build a system and they get the liberals buy-in because it's all systematic and it's put in the law. And then they use the system to kill people and destroy lives and rip away civil rights protections, which sounds a little more like formal and legalese and all that. But what it comes down to is it destroys people's lives, and it destroys what it means to be alive in this country. The state of Louisiana is going to bring back involuntary servitude. Involuntary servitude. Or, in other words, slavery. Is this the only time they use slavery in the article? There's three batches in this page for slavery. One of them is a comment, Louisiana, where slavery goes to live. The second one, forcing people into jail or slavery because they're poor, is something rational societies abolished decades, if not centuries, ago. But, of course, Republicans are doing what they do. I mean, we had debtors' prisons in the past, and we had, under past administrations, like the same social groups that put in place prohibition in the USA, the same like Christianity affiliated folks, they had workhouses for the poor, and that is also slavery. And it was really there it was marketed as a way to reduce alcoholism and undesired behaviors, and the poor people getting up to their filthy stuff. I will note Misanthrope, despite her name, Misanthrope, is being a little too optimistic here. This is bringing back workhouses and debtors' prisons, and it is not illegal right now to be unhoused, mentally ill, or addicted. Actually, it kind of is under those executive orders. A law like this would end up in the courts and found to be unconstitutional. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court of the United States has a track record of doing a lot of supporting a lot of unconstitutional actions. They're specifically not supposed to. And I mean, you shouldn't go through the news comments, but I wanted to make the point that slavery is mentioned one time in the article and 2 times in the comments, which are, I don't know why news articles allow comments. Honestly, I don't. Find a capital Bravo somewhere. Bravo, Alpha, section. All right, so this is section 5385. Charlie. 3, which goes to 3, yeah. Section 5385, Charlie 3. To the extent of his financial resources, a defendant who is placed under the supervision of the Homelessness Court Program, what a sweet name, may be required to pay a portion of or the entire cost of the treatment program. Again, interpret this the worst way possible. They're going to be required to pay the cost of the treatment program. And I imagine that's going to be deliberately inflated by the program because chances are they're going to outsource some part of it to some corporation or group that wants to make a lot of money. That's how it all works. It's how it all works. If the defendant does not have the financial resources to pay all the related costs, wait a second though, you say, this was supposed to be to the extent of his financial resources. I don't know why we're assuming it's all male, but okay. To the extent of his financial resources, but they don't have the financial resources. Well, because their intent is to charge you a whole bunch of money for services you never agreed to and that you were forced to sign to under duress. Threat of a $500 fine and 6 months in prison on your first offense. And then when they get you again, because after you get out of jail, you still need a home, then there's going to be $1,000 fine and 12 months. The court, with the recommendation of the treatment program, may order the defendant to perform supervised work for the benefit of the community in lieu of paying all or a part of the costs relating to his treatment and supervision. The work shall be performed for and under the supervising authority of a parish, municipality, or other political subdivision or agency of the state or a charitable organization that renders service to the community or its residents. State-sanctioned slavery. State-sanctioned slavery. That's all it is. That's all this is. Jesus fucking Christ. Like, I know this country's bad, but wow. Oh, also, fees can be waived, but like they just put in place, they wrote a whole half page about what they want, how they want the forced labor to work. So they're not gonna just give you the single line. Okay, they wrote this in a single line because they don't care how it's executed, because they're not going to execute it. At the conclusion of the period of probation, and on advice of the person providing the defendant's treatment, and the probation officer may recommend the court take one of the following: revoke the defendant's probation and sentence the defendant because he has not successfully completed the treatment and has violated one or more conditions of probation, which, by the way, can include doing the gainful employment. That alone will have you noted as violating one or more conditions of probation. I should do that, like, that level, methodical voice whenever I'm reading law. Oh, and like, of course, then you go to prison. Extend the period of probation. You can also just be put in for longer, right? You agree to 12 months. It can be made to 24. It can be made to 25 months, and then you're there for longer than you could have got sentenced if you just fought the charge and lost. Although, they might just, like, delay your trial 25 months, too, so that, like, you're still gonna go to jail for 25 months. They can do whatever the fuck they want in this country. Apparently, you don't have any rights. So why bring this up now, right? This is a story from one state. It's a really bad story. This country has a history of slavery through similar methods. Being a vagabond was a charge that was used, weaponized against African American people to force them into slavery in the period after the emancipation, and also the reclaiming of the states after the Civil War. And in the aftermath of all of that, when farmers still wanted black people to work on their farms, white plantation owners wanted black people to work on their farms, they had police start charging black people sleeping on the side of the road with vagabondism. And that's effectively what's happening here. We are back in the 1800s, 1900s. And I really do think that this charge will stand. I know Miss Anthropic, or whatever her name was, in a comment of the Newsweek article, was saying it would be found unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has already made its judgment on this. In this Supreme Court opinion here, City of Grants Pass, Oregon, v. Johnson, decided on June 28, 2024, the Supreme Court decided that you can get put in prison. Or you can get fined, right? Fined or put in prison. Or, in this case, both. And they decided that that is completely legal. Even if the homeless shelter, there is not a homeless shelter to offer you. Because this case overturned a ruling that was used in those, for instance, in those vagabond cases. It decided it was cruel and unusual to punish people for sleeping outside unless you could give them a place to sleep instead. It is cruel and unusual. You are going to be running sleep deprivation. Like, you are forcing sleep deprivation here. Sleep is a biological necessity. That's the legal way of saying you are torturing these people if you put them between jail time and staying up for their entire life. What nation criminalizes going to sleep? I keep on, like, cycling over this point. I know that there's been worse. Like, you can just get grabbed off the streets without actually a crime, just under the guise of looking illegal. And it did happen to plenty of people. And that they've arrested citizens through that. They've arrested U.S. legal natural-born citizens. ICE has. They've canceled legal citizenship and grabbed people. Like, I'm aware. I know. And this isn't, like, new. But still, to put that into law means the mask is already off. Although we know the mask is off, but, like, this is, again, the mask is off. I challenge every single legislator that supports this to stay up for an entire week. Just 1 week. All you gotta do. Stay up for 1 week. And sooner, having Republicans clawing off their own skin is a win for humanity, even if it isn't a win legally. They can then go all vote to pass this into law. I want the sleep-deprived Republicans to be scratching off their own skin. This is partially out of my own desire to see Republicans injured. I mean, my what is that? Schadenfreude is what it's called, I think. It's May 8th, 2026. It's been a week since I made the first part of this video, and I was really struggling to oh my god, let's not do that anymore. I was really struggling to come up with what to say to finish off this video. I don't want the topic to become too old because, you know, every new week it's a new tragedy, and there's so much going on with the, like, Iranian war that I haven't even been paying attention to in these videos, and I don't know. I don't know. That's my takeaway. I do not know. I do not know what we are supposed to do. I do not know. Because it's beyond the point of education. I mean, we all have access to information. Some people just choose not to believe it. Some people are a lot of people in power are intentionally trying to destroy our lives. There's nothing else you can really say to something like this. What do you even say? What do you do in response to a bill that's going to abduct people off the streets at a time where we have masked agents randomly taking people off the streets? What do you do? What is there to do? How does a society come to the point where they tolerate this? And if they'd allow random working class people from their streets to get abducted based purely on the color of their skin, how are we supposed to argue that homeless people who are stigmatized by a majority of the population deserve to not get abducted? Like, the only avenue I can think of to play to for that would be to say that white people are going to get abducted, but most of the people that hate black people and brown people, people of color, most of the white people who hate people of color, they would hate white people that are behaving as they describe trashy, because, you know, because they're bigots. That's what it is. They think some people are less than human, and I don't know what you do in response to this. This is so far beyond, and I've said this in every video probably. You could probably take a snippet of me saying this in every video I made. This is so far beyond anything that I ever thought was possible to happen in this country. And my only real response is just to point at it and say, atrocities beyond anything I can cope with. That's it. That's all I can do. I do not know what else you can do. We could all get on the street corner and wave around signs, but it's not like people don't hear this. It's not like people don't see it. And for all of the sign waving, what good has that done? It's shown the world, it's shown the presidents that there are people who don't agree with him. He knows that. Well, Donald Trump is not even of relevance. The Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, they know that. They said that the revolution is going to be bloodless if the left allows it to be. They know that the left fucking hates them. That the liberals don't agree with all their policies. Look, for as long as I'm still alive, you're gonna have these videos. And I will make sure this channel, this little niche of YouTube, is a place that isn't paved over by the whitewashed perspective of American society that the liberals are pushing, or the alt-right bigotry that the conservatives are pushing. And unfortunately, there is a lot there are many horrible forces right now in the United States of America. And it's not just the Republican Party or even the think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society. I'm not just talking about those. Those are one group. But you also got the medical system, you've got the prison system, you've got the atrocities committed by ordinary citizens, you have the bigoted organizations like Autism Speaks and the LGB Alliance, and, you know, groups that operate under the guise of being a good organization and are not. Are far from it. The entire hospital and medical system in this country, all of the For the Children, data, internet encroaching policies. So that's my act of resistance, if you haven't already picked that up from these videos. I'm just going to keep calling it out. I'm going to keep saying this. I'm going to refuse to compromise. I'm going to refuse to compromise on what I deem acceptable. I don't have much else I can do, you know. Being the person I am, having the hindrances I have. Can't go out there and be your next Luigi, but I can call for them. And I can defend the names of those who do something, anything, to try to resist, physically, this takeover. Because I know that the corporations and the Democratic Party and the establishment is going to try to pave over this if they get back power. If the Republicans lose in 2026 and 2028, if we get a Democrat president, a Democrat majority, they're going to try to excuse this and try to do population control in response. They know, the corporations know they're angry, and I think honestly the corporations and the economic sector thinks they overplayed their hand a bit. Because having ICE agents marching through the streets, terrorizing your cities, is a lot more than they probably intended. They definitely wanted the war in Iran. I don't think they wanted ICE to be terrorizing U.S. cities. I don't think they wanted to stress test the population that much. Although we are showing ourselves to be totally capable of just enduring it and putting up with it and having no self-respect and just swallowing down the pain. If anything, it's probably increased shopping therapy and antidepressants and use of numbing therapy. So maybe the economic sector isn't doing so bad. But I do know that their next plan, if the Democrats take back power, what the economic sector is hoping for is that Dems take back power and the Democrats mitigate the anger in the population and try to curb that down and talk about forgiveness. They did it with Obama. They did it with Barack Obama when George W. Bush left office and the anti-war movement was calling for the trial of every Bush-era war defense official, and that did not happen. Similar things will happen with Palantir, with Flock, and the Democrats are going to take control. They're probably going to free people from detention, the people that are still in our country's borders. They're not going to do anything to help to, make up for the people who've experienced these atrocities, because nothing happened after the Japanese internment camps, and nothing has happened to all the people in ICE detention under Biden, under the first Trump term. Nothing happened there. So, Democrats are going to come in, they're going to assume a spot halfway between what we're experiencing now and what we were experiencing in 2023. And they're going to say, this is the best we can offer, let's make incremental change. And we have to all say fuck no to that. And that's going to require a lot of actions that are deemed irrational and seem impulsive, because that is how we break the control the Democrats are going to try to take. They're going to try to come in, be the adults in the room, and hold the line and hold things together and have people going to work and going to school, and we have to say fuck no to that for as long as the people who have been abducted off our streets have gone unfulfilled, without reparations made. We need to break down every societal system that has normalized abducting people off our streets. And I'm talking about ICE, and I'm talking about the kidnapping of homeless folks. We need to break down every social norm that has put in place this idea that people in homelessness should have to submit themselves to that, or that people should submit themselves to the government. We need to act with incredible rage. We need to match, and I said this back during the Jan 6th insurrection, I'll say it again now. This country runs off of violence. They are planning on dealing with the homeless population from the economic devastation they've unleashed. They're planning on dealing with that the same way they deal with every other thing they deem undesirable, which is with extreme violence. We, the American people, need to respond back with extreme violence. And for most people, that's going to be one action they do in their entire life. And you have to make yourself do that. We need as many people as possible to be willing to put their life behind standing up for something. And I said anything, because some disruption is better than a quiet roll into fascism. We're going to see homeless people get picked up off the street by cops. I want as many of those homeless people as possible to fight back tooth and nail, because they are going to be disappeared. And at that point, you have nothing to lose. So bite off that police officer's face. If they're coming in to kidnap you, if they're breaking down your door, if you can shoot down the first 6 people that break into your home without a warrant, that is progress. That is something. If only to make your life mean something. What's the alternative, folks? This isn't a pleasant thought. Nothing is a pleasant thought right now. There is nothing pleasant about this. We have homeless people and people of color being systemically targeted. We have trans people being tortured in prisons. There is nothing pleasant about any of this. So whether it's gruesome Newsom or it's some other ticket, make it known the government has to make amends for this time. Every person raped by these systems must be compensated. And these systems must be abolished. I'm talking about the troubled teen industry, the prison industrial complex, the school-to-prison pipeline, the therapy industrial complex. All of them must be destroyed. Because they have done far too much. Far too much to fuck us over. I want the end to the DEA. I want the end to ICE, the Department of Homeland Security, the destruction and prosecution of everyone in those organizations, everyone in ICE, everyone in the Department of Homeland Security. And you're probably thinking now, that's never going to happen. And you're probably right. But you know what we can do is we can put down our foot and we can say we will not compromise. That there will be no peace in this country until there is justice. And if that justice never comes, then there will never be peace. We'll take 35 years of terrorism. That's how Ireland got their independence. It's not going to come it's not going to come easily. It's going to come from a lot of people who have absolutely nothing to lose. And right now, we're in a position where more people than ever have nothing to lose. Because the system will take everything from you. Unapologetically. So if they come for you, if the police come knocking on your door, well, breaking into your door, if ICE breaks in your window, if a police officer shakes you awake on a bench, you got nothing to lose. Fight like hell. I don't care if it's a grocery store, a concert hall. Fight like hell. At the very least, I do not want to disappear without being memorable. I do not want to be forgotten. I do not want to be forgettable. Because if you got nothing to lose. And if they're going to do worse things to you in custody, which they will, you got no reason not to fight back with everything you have. And for us, in this system, the most powerful tool we have is just our autonomy. Never let anyone take that away from you. And if they try to, or if the system tries to rape you, burn your life, a guiding light for everyone to follow.